Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to draw a dog's mouth in graphite. Now I'm going to cover all aspects of drawing the tongue, the teeth, the gums and the surrounding area, and I really wanted to make this little focus tutorial because I think if this is approached in the wrong way it can become very overwhelming. There's quite a lot of different elements here, so if we were to draw the wrong bit at the wrong time it can get very confusing. Now the first thing that I like to do is just start with a HB pencil and map in my main structures. I want to be making sure that I know exactly where all of the main elements are within the area that I'm working on. So here I'm isolating the sides of the tongue from the top of the mouth, and then I'll do the same with the teeth. Now this is only just a blocking in process, and to continue that I'm going to then work with graphite powder. Now I'm using this small paper blending stump to apply this graphite, and as you can see here it's creating a very soft look. Now my biggest tip when working with graphite powder is we're not ever trying to get this as dark as what the pencils will do with our later layers. This purely is a blocking in process and it just helps to simplify that reference photo. Now regardless of anything that I'm drawing, it could be fur, feathers, a landscape, whatever it may be, I always want to try to simplify the process as much as I can. Now if I break it up into my main lights and darks and then I work on small sections, it just makes it much easier to understand exactly what layer we should be drawing first. Now as I start working with my graphite pencils here, I am again just isolating where are the teeth, where's the roof of the mouth and the tongue. Now I could quite easily work with whole individual layers for all of the area of the mouth, but because there are so many different areas to this, I don't want to become overwhelmed at any point. Now I know for me personally that when I experience that, I might then start to rush through the layers and that will affect how realistic the end portrait will look. So to avoid that, I just prefer working in these smaller sections. And again, this first layer stage, it doesn't look great, but that's absolutely fine. This is not what the finished portrait is going to look like, and this is something that I say frequently in my real-time tutorials. Because I do add the voiceovers while I'm drawing, I'm able to explain everything in the moment. So when working on something that is more complex like this, it really just helps to make it more step by step. Now as I start working with more of my darker pencils, my biggest tip at this stage is I wouldn't recommend to jump in to your darkest pencil first. You can see that I've built that layer up in stages. I don't want to just be heading straight for those softer, like a 9B pencil for example, because there are a couple of issues that can happen. You can get more graphite shine. This is something that doesn't personally bother me in my drawings, but I do know that it can be an issue for some artists. And jumping into your softest, darkest pencils with your very first layer is one of the things that can exaggerate that. Now the other is I like to build up my darker values in stages just to enhance the depth within those shadowed areas. I want to be making sure that if there is any slight alteration in that shadow, if there is a very slight mid-tone for example, I want to make sure that I've captured that. Now going straight in with a dark pencil, you're going to potentially miss over and skip parts of that. So it's something that I do want to pay very close attention to. Now continuing with my graphite powder here, I am always looking at the way the lights and the darks are positioned. You can see that at the very end of the tongue, it sort of sits over the canine teeth. So it makes those two ridges or curved sections at the end more obvious. I want to be making sure that I've captured that, and in order to do that, placing the highlights and shadows accurately is going to give the shape and form. Now if those lights and darks were positioned more at the back of the tongue, then I'm going to make the canine teeth also look like they're positioned further back. It really does have a knock-on effect with the proportions and perspective of the entire drawing. Now once I've worked on that, I'm going to start to then build in a little bit more of the gum area. Now I haven't necessarily finished with the tongue, but it is at that stage where I feel I can then work on the section next to it. Now I'm also working here just with my graphite pencils rather than graphite powder because there are a combination of areas that I want to be making sure I've got those more harsher but curved lines. Once I've got those in place, that's when I am coming back in with my small paper blending stump to use that graphite powder to fill that area a little quicker. But I do want to be making sure here that if I do have any main structures on the gum, that I do hint at those with my pencils first. It just helps to keep everything a little bit more tidy and precise. Now, the one thing that I talk about throughout all of my YouTube tutorials and of course my real-time step-by-step lessons, which are all linked in the description below, is the importance of contrast. Now, contrast is the importance of getting the shadows dark enough and the highlights bright enough, but for me it's also about the crucial midtones. Now, the mouth area, especially when the animal has the mouth open like this, we're going to have a lot more of that sharper contrast. But if we don't capture the midtones, then that area is potentially still going to look a little flatter if we need to capture some softness. Now, the area here where you're trying to capture more of a wetter look, in order to achieve that, the highlights need to be bright and the darks need to be dark. This is going to help make anything look more shiny. So water, the metal tag on a collar, for example, those principles would apply there as well. Now, when I start working on the teeth, this is one of those areas where I think the contrast can be increased unnecessarily. Now, what I mean by that is sometimes teeth are just left as bright white. Now, that is very often hardly ever the case, unless there is a real light, bright source of that light hitting directly on the tooth that's making it look a little bit overexposed. But most of the time there's going to be a shadow, especially on the back teeth where the top part of the mouth is preventing that light from catching the corners here. And I've made sure on the teeth at the back there to make sure to focus on the midtones. I've put graphite over all sections and then I'm coming in here with my eraser to lift in and put in some of those highlights. Now, this is something where getting the balance right is important. And you've seen now that although I'm coming in with my erasers, I still do darken it up with either some blending tools or my graphite pencils, because I don't want the teeth to be bright white. Now, when I work on the smaller teeth at the front here, you might not necessarily see them in some reference photos. It depends on how far the tongue is hanging over the front section of the mouth. But when I am working on this area and I can see the teeth, I want to be making sure that I've got the size of the teeth right. They need to be making sure that they are curving, they're following the right jawline, which of course is also going to be very unique to each animal. Now, when I'm working with my graphite here, this section of the reference photo was a little bit more out of focus, so I'm actually working with more of my softening and blending techniques rather than more of the graphite pencils. Now, even though I'm working with my paper blending stump, I'm still making sure to be accurate. Now, if this is something that you're still trying to get more confidence with in the smaller, more fiddly areas, then you can absolutely use your graphite pencils, but you do want to be making sure that you're using something like a paper blending stump to soften those areas of pencil if that section is a little bit out of focus. It just really helps with the effect that's been captured in that reference photo if that is something that you're trying to replicate in your drawing. And regardless of the mouth of any animal that I'm drawing, I will use these same techniques and approaches. It just depends on what is required for that individual reference photo. But breaking it up into each element and the smaller sections is something that I find really invaluable. It does make that drawing process much easier. So I really do hope that this video has been useful. If it was, I'd be very grateful if you could give it a like and a thumbs up because it makes a huge difference to my channel. I also upload a couple of videos here to YouTube every week, so if you would like to get notified of that content, then don't forget to hit the subscribe and the bell button. Here is the finished drawing and I absolutely loved working on this. If you are interested in drawing along to the real-time tutorial, then I will link all of the information to that in the description below. If you do have any art-related questions, feel free to pop them in the comments because I'm more than happy to help if I can. And I'm going to be uploading another video at the end of the week, but as always, thank you so much for watching.